The work for the 2014-15 budget was done a year ago when this council made the sensible decision to set, in principle at least, a 2-year budget. There have had to be some changes, but we were prepared for them. Our sound financial management had seen us put money aside for emergencies, so we were prepared for the 2.4 million hit that we've had to take from the closure of Tilbury Power Station. Last year, Mr Mayor, some said that we were silly, some even said we were stupid to put money into reserves when we were having to make cuts. At the time, I said that we were being prudent, and so it has proved. In addition, Mr Mayor, our hard work to raise reserves to a sensible level has allowed us to protect the ordinary working men and women of Thurrock from another increase in council tax. The fire service has followed suit, so it is only the Essex Police part of the bill which will be going up this year. And you won't be surprised to learn that they're putting their part of the bill up by very nearly 2%. Last year, Mr Mayor, when we were considering the 2-year budget, we agreed to plan for a 1.9% increase in council tax. As time went on, it became ever more obvious, but whatever national politicians may say, wages are still not keeping up with inflation. Train tickets, heating and lighting costs, the weekly shop, the cost of childcare are all going up and making even deeper inroads into our pockets. So it was important that we did the little that we can in the fight against the cost of living crisis that is affecting so many. And Mr Mayor, this year the government has changed the way that this council tax freeze grant works. So the money given will not drop out of the calculation in a year or two. That meant that we're able to top up the budget by £400,000 from reserves and ask officers to find appropriate savings that were scheduled for 2015 onwards and bring them forward. Because that's what we've been able to do, the 2-year budget has meant we've been able to look even further ahead into the huge challenges that are yet to come. But that doesn't mean that we've stood still this past year. We've been working hard to deliver savings. For instance, Mr Mayor, by renegotiating with water companies, they now pay us an extra £200,000 for collecting their water rates. We've cut housing management costs by £230,000. We've saved £1,000 a day by more efficient management of our assets. And we stand to keep an extra £6 million of business rates income over the next 4 years by negotiating our pooling arrangements with neighbouring authorities, Basildon and Havering, and yes, with Barking and Dagenham. And Mr Mayor, when it comes to B&D as it's known, we have to talk about shared management and shared services. And of course we share with many other authorities. We even now share a service with the government itself, as we announced a couple of weeks ago. And we will have saved over £500,000, an estimated £560,000 in 2013-14, compared to £350,000 the year before. In public health, we successfully fought and battled for months to get the £1.1 million shortfall in the public health grant that we should have received at the start of the year back. We've saved over £150,000 by bringing a number of people with learning disabilities back home to Thurrock from expensive out-of-borough placements. That's better for them and it's better for their families. We've reduced the use of temporary accommodation, including bed and breakfast, for the most vulnerable, saving so far £100,000. All the more important, Mr Mayor, when we know that the amount of people sleeping rough in the United Kingdom has risen by a third under this government. We have moved teenage students onto the popular post-16 bus pass, allowing them to travel around the borough throughout the week, and us to deliver over £100,000 of savings. And by making our work with young people not in education, employment or training, the so-called NEETs, everyone's job, we have not only saved over £80,000, but our performance has improved too. Our NEET figures are now at 5.5%, a reduction of 1.1 percentage points from 1 year ago. And the amount of our young people not known to the system is down to 0.3%. That's a reduction of 6.1% from December 12, and the best performance anywhere in the country. Mr Mayor, I also want to take this opportunity to highlight some proposals that could have a major impact, a really positive impact, on our borough and our lives. 2 of them will be discussed at Overview and Scrutiny next week, and I would ask the members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to look carefully at the plans and to report their thoughts to Cabinet, for we will be examining them ourselves a fortnight later. The first is a really important and potentially exciting plan for Purfleet. We've spoken many times over the years about the future of Purfleet and how it will lead the west of the borough into the future. The proposal that the committee is being asked to scrutinise, if we were to agree to it, would do far more than that. Yes, it will deliver the new homes and jobs that we're looking for, but also the proposal from a consortium headed by Sir Tim Lawrence would look to build on the amazing creative industries rapidly becoming established just down the road at High House to provide 500,000 square feet of high-tech film and television studios. Now, Mr Mayor, I'm really looking forward to the committee's deliberations and hearing their recommendations, but that's not all. They're also being asked to examine the latest proposals for Grays South and the railway station, another exciting project. Not on the same scale, perhaps, but a key part of our hopes to turn Grays into a thriving, bustling and exciting town that will attract new business, new shoppers and even new and first-time visitors to the area. Again, it's important that the committee looks over these proposals with a keen eye and lets the Cabinet know exactly what it thinks. But it's important that we get these decisions right, and it's important that everybody looks closely and speaks out about them. These are not small decisions, they're decisions which could affect everyone in the borough for decades to come. Film and television studios, the Royal Opera House's scenery headquarters, the Royal Opera House's costume store, factory and museum coming soon, the National Centre for Backstage Theatre Training, all, Mr Mayor, in Purfleet. And if we put that together with the proposals for Grays, and we put it with the fact that we've secured £4 million of funding for local businesses and interest-free loans through the Tiger scheme, the fact that we lead across half of Essex on helping businesses reduce their carbon footprint and their costs, the fact that we've supported Grays-based businesses to create a town team, the support we're giving to help create jobs at Thames Oil Port and Enterprise Park, plus all the work we're doing to encourage businesses, small, medium and large, to flourish, clearly demonstrates that we are a business-friendly authority and that Thurrock is open for business. There is, Mr Mayor, an exciting future ahead, but equally we have to remember that we are still in extremely challenging times. The government has already announced £25 million of cuts for this authority over the 3 years from April 2015. And that's without increased pressures on adult social care, because we're all living longer, children's services, we need to ensure our young people are safe, environmental services, more people are coming to live here, transport, we all know that our roads need a lot of work to get them up to scratch. We reckon, Mr Mayor, that the savings needed by 2018 will be in the region of £35 million to £40 million. That's somewhere between a quarter and a third of our total budget. A quarter and a third, Mr Mayor. I do ask, imagine what you'd have to do at home if your income was cut in that way. Now, members will have seen posters around the building showing that we've been asking staff to come forward with money-saving ideas, and they have been doing that. Elected members also need to think carefully about what they ask for and to put their minds to where savings can be made. We're putting together an online programme that allows people to see the consequences of taking £14 million out of the budget, the areas and services which will be hit, and the problems that we are facing. There will also, Mr Mayor, be an opportunity for local people to put forward their own money-saving ideas, to suggest new ways of working, to look at areas where the council may be able to increase its income, or work more closely with other authorities or organisations. So, Mr Mayor, in closing, council tax has been frozen at the lowest rate in Essex. Reserves rebuilt, innovative ways of working, the most exciting regeneration agenda anywhere in the country, and a council that is ready to meet the huge financial challenges to come. Mr Mayor, I move recommendations.
Sometimes try and compare the budget for a local council to the budget for a business or a household. And in some ways that comparison is valid. Just like any home or any business, the council has to live within its means and ensure that its incomings and its outgoings are in balance. But in one important respect, the council's budget is very different. If a business is run inefficiently or tries to charge too much for its products, its customers will desert it and it will go bust. If a council does the same, it can simply pass on the costs to local council taxpayers who have no choice but to pay up. Just 2 weeks ago, the Cabinet was presented with a proposed budget which included a 2% increase in council tax. This despite the fact that the government was offering a £600,000 grant to Thurrock if we agreed to freeze our council tax this year. Mr Mayor, to refuse that freeze grant again and raise council tax would have been the wrong decision. It would have sent a message to Thurrock taxpayers, who are themselves having to deal with static wages and rising household bills, that the council will look after its own and leave you to pick up the tab. Then, in an announcement which seemed to come as a surprise to everyone from myself to I suspect even the council's finance department, we were told the administration had changed their minds and had now decided to accept the freeze grant after all. No one seems quite sure how this came about. Maybe the leader of the council had some kind of revelation that fairness has to include fairness to the hard-working local people who pay the bills. Or maybe it was some kind of political survival instinct cutting in. Either way, I do congratulate the administration over their change of heart on this matter and confirm our wholehearted support for the fact that the Thurrock share of the council tax will now be frozen this year. Then we come to the matter of the expenditure budget. Just like a household or a business, once we know how much income we expect the council to receive, we can determine how that money will be spent. In previous years, we've spent many hours in scrutiny committees and in the council chamber debating the merits of proposals for increases in some services and cuts to others. Sometimes we become involved in detail to the point of distraction. I clearly remember a long and hard-fought debate as to whether the council should continue to lock local parks at night, a service which costs less than £10,000 a year. At less than 0.01% of the council's annual budget, we would perhaps have been justified in saying, just get on with it. But it does show how seriously balancing the books was being taken. But not this year. Instead of a detailed set of proposals, we've been presented with a cursory couple of pages, which basically amounts to do the same as last year and hope it works out. And in fact, Councillor Kent has just given far more detail in the speech he's just given us than the actual recommendations and the actual documents we're being asked to vote on tonight. But even worse, the proposed budget does not balance. On page 129, it clearly shows that the budget will be financed in part by taking £2.4 million out of reserves, just to keep day-to-day services running. And it's been suggested that instead of offering a plan for how this shortfall will be made up, we should leave it to officers to try and come up with something in year. Mr. Mayor, the lack of political leadership this shows is breathtaking. The administration has tonight invited us to consider and vote on the price of a sausage sandwich, but expects us to gloss over a £2.4 million hole in the budget with a vague trust us it will be okay. And for the record, that amounts to 519,518 and a half sausage sandwiches, something which even the stalwart staff of the Culver Centre canteen would struggle to serve up. Using reserves in year is sometimes necessary. That's why we have them. And in fact, over £2 million intended to go into future reserves was actually used to prop up overspends in last year's budget. But to start the year planning to depend on reserves, even before the in-year pressures have happened, is reckless and it's wrong. And it's also cowardly. To list it out in full would reveal the extent to which the council is living beyond its means, and to identify exactly where those savings are going to be made, and we're saying they will have to be made this year, would require tough decisions and political courage. The administration would have to face the hard truth that its social care model is not financially sustainable, its centralised education function no longer fits the modern world of academies and free schools, and its approach to managing leisure and cultural facilities is driven by nostalgia rather than good business sense. But rather than risk a few challenging headlines and negative election leaflets, this administration has tried to gloss over the problem and pretend that the savings don't have to be made, or that deciding where to make them is somebody else's responsibility. Deciding on those £2.4 million of savings is not officers' responsibility, it's yours. If you don't want to shoulder it, then the answer is simple. Stand down and we'll do it for you. Residents of Thurrock know what needs to be done with public finances. They know that the work isn't finished yet, and although no one likes having to live with less, they know who they can trust to get the job done, and that's the Conservative Party. Mr. Mayor, we have repeatedly called for this council to adopt the rigorous discipline of zero-based budgeting. Instead, we've been offered zero detail budgeting, zero courage budgeting, and zero responsibility budgeting. I'm confident that accepting the government's freeze grant gives us the right financial footing to set a budget for 2014-15. I have no confidence that proposals before us tonight about expenditure are the best way to manage that budget, and no confidence in this administration's ability either to deliver it or to make the £2.4 million of further savings that they've tried to bury in the detail. On that basis, we will of course be supporting the council tax freeze and the statutory resolutions that flow out of it, but we cannot support the detail of the expenditure budget that goes with it. I'd also hoped we might be able to reach consensus on the enabling motions for Gloriana, but 1.7e again delegates to Cabinet the ability to agree that advances to Gloriana be considered as part of the General Fund Capital Programme. Again, I would have asked that that's been deferred. It doesn't seem that it has been, so again I would move that we change that recommendation to say the ability to agree that advances to Gloriana to be considered as part of the Capital Fund Programme be deferred until a full debate on Gloriana has taken place at full council. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Anderson suggests that we duck difficult decisions and that we should stand aside and allow the Conservatives to take them instead. I do have to remind Councillor Anderson that since 2010 we've made savings of over £50 million. We didn't do that by ducking difficult decisions. You suggest that we should stand aside and let the Conservatives have a go. Now we remember what happened the last time the Conservatives run the council. Under this Labour administration, council tax in real terms would have gone down by 2%. In 6 years of the Conservatives, it went up by 27%. Mr Mayor, at the same time, they denuded our reserves down to £2 million, managed to overspend a budget by £4 million at year end, having already taken £2 million out in year to prop the budget up. Mr Mayor, people will never ever forget that. The record of this administration is that the auditors have signed our accounts off with no complaints whatsoever. We have balanced the budget every year, and we present a balanced budget this year. Yes, we have taken money from reserves. If you read the accounts, you will see that we put 1.7 million into a contingency last year. That is 1.7 million of the reserve that we're taking because we were concerned that with the localisation of non-domestic rates, be localised in the way they were, that the closure of a large business would impact us dreadfully. And that came to pass. The closure of Tilbury Power Station in this full year will cost the council £2.4 million. It is right, proper and prudent to use that reserve and a little bit more to fill that void. Mr Mayor, Councillor Anderson seems to live in some kind of dream world. You know, we have already had our grant cut by something in the region of £20 million. Government grant will fall by £16 million over the next 2 years. That's a funding cut of worth £500 for every single property in this borough. Yes, we have to make difficult decisions. Yes, we have to make spending cuts. We know that. Councillor Anderson asks where the detail is in the budget. I have to once again remind him that the detail was agreed a year ago. A year ago, these savings proposals went through overview and scrutiny. A year ago, he stood there and criticised them, but as I recall, didn't vote against them, didn't vote against the principle of putting a 1.9% council tax increase this year in for planning purposes. But he does seem to have totally forgotten that. I would remind him that, once again, the working papers for this budget have been to Cabinet on many occasions, but he's given up coming to Cabinet. Not only does he not bother to ask questions about the budget at Cabinet, he doesn't even bother to attend anymore. The big ticket items went through overview and scrutiny at the end of last year in the normal way, which is how we get here to today. You know, Mr Mayor, the fact is that he knows that in very, very trying circumstances, very difficult circumstances, this is a good budget. It's a balanced budget that delivers a council tax freeze to people of Thurrock, something that the Conservatives didn't manage to do in 6 years running the authority, and they don't like it.
We've got wise people on the Conservative front bench there, who were the Treasury people in 2010. Yeah, they do have a mind that they forget the truth. Not only was it just £2 million worth of reserves they'd left us, but there was an overspend. And had we carried on that overspend, what it would have meant, we'd have become like Liverpool Council. We'd have been riding around in taxis, giving out redundancy notices. That's how well you managed it. You know, well, no, that's absolutely, my colleague's absolutely corrected me. It would have been officers delivering them on a bike because we couldn't afford the money. So, you see, they are living in a dream world. This council,
can we listen to the speaker, please?
Yeah. This council, this Labour council, and we must congratulate the leader of the authority, along with the cabinet, for actually coming through this. It has gone to scrutiny. You've had every opportunity to scrutinise this, and at the 11th hour, all you can do is make fun of it. I'm astonished.
To Councillor Kent for what is a truly amazing budget in these times of austerity. As we've heard, over £50 million worth of savings having to be made in the last 4 years. Councillor Anderson alluded to the social care budget, which is now not tenable. What I would like to congratulate my directorate, everyone within my directorate, the Adult Health and Commissioning Directorate is forecasting that it will break even for this financial year, Councillor Anderson, as it has done for the past 4 years. So I think that we have a budget that is very tenable. This is a significant achievement considering during this financial year we've incorporated the public health team within the Directorate, delivered over £1 million worth of savings due to government cuts, through negotiating better prices with our providers, securing extra resources from the NHS and tightly managing our demand, expanded those areas of provision such as re-ablement and local area coordination, where we feel investment will deliver long-term savings, and opened Elizabeth Gardens extra care housing scheme. Demand pressures continue to grow as people live longer, and more young people coming through transition require support from adult services as well. It's estimated that these extra demands alone add a further 5% of cost pressures onto our adult social care each year. Next year will be an even bigger challenge for us. We need to deliver a further £1.5 million worth of savings from our residents of Thurrock due to our austerity measurements by the government. At the same time, these demand pressures are growing. We will have to prepare for the implementation of the Care Bill, which would be massive change in the legal framework and funding arrangements for adult social care. And finally, we'll be looking through the Better Care Fund to see how much more we can do together with the NHS to deliver a better, more joined-up, cost-effective service within budget.
Actually quite shocked Councillor Kent thinks that Councillor Anderson lives in a dream world. I'm beginning to wonder whether he lives in a hall of smoke and mirrors. We have budget papers here that describe what the Labour Group like to call pressures, financial pressures within the year, which when we were in administration, they called overspends. They completely gloss over the fact that £4.7 million had been taken out of other budgets and other services to make these shortfalls in the amount of money they're spending versus the amount of money that's coming in. We also get the accusation we never froze council tax when we were in power with this authority. No, you're quite right, because the Labour government never gave us the opportunity to freeze it. They go on about £50 million worth of cuts and another £40 million worth of cuts to come. When I was elected in 2006, we were quite happy to be saying how well we did with the Gershon savings of about 80–90 million. Again, savings that local authorities have had to be making since before 2006. So then we get to the government cuts itself. What a terrible thing, the coalition government cutting the money that taxpayers pay to the government and don't give it to the council. The reason they're doing that is because when their government was in charge, for every £4 of tax that was coming in, £6 of that was being spent. So we were bankrupting the country. The country's credit card nearly went pop. So the only way to address the balance is to do what should be done, and that's reduce spending right across the board, not just local authorities, but right across the board. We will, at some point, no doubt, be back as it was when the Labour government took over in tax credit as a nation. At that point, I'm sure the good times will begin to roll again. Now, we just go back to this budget. As I said, and as Councillor Anderson said, this is the same, effectively the same budget as last year, which was effectively the same budget as the year before and the year before that. The reason is what we do, we add something to it, we take something off, we end up with a figure at the end of the day, it all comes to around what we should pay some council tax, that's fine. Except for this year, £2.8 million of that's had to come from reserves. So if we hadn't got the reserves, we would have bankrupted the local authority. We can't have a budget that's 98% set. We have to have a 100% funded budget, not one where we hope that officers will come up with these savings. So yet again, we're spending in the same way we spend year on year on year. One of the things I did welcome in Councillor Kent's speech was the fact that we're going to look to try to change the way we spend. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I do welcome that. We do need to have a zero-base budget. We do need to make sure what we're spending is right to spend. Spending £10 million a year on temps and consultants, is that the right way to spend taxpayers' money? Yes or no? A couple of £1 million on local taxi firms, is that the right way to spend council taxpayers' money? Yes or no? I'm not going to say yes it is, I'm not going to say no it's not, because we don't have the detail here. But I will not be supporting the budget as it appears, but I will be supporting the 0% council tax freeze.
When I read this budget report,
I read to 1.3 and actually really welcomed the opportunity for a freeze, bearing in mind we'd actually seen documents going to Cabinet that were proposing a 2% increase. So I really welcome that and will be supporting. And let's not forget that that is brought about by this government's acknowledgement, the Conservative coalition's government acknowledgement of hard-working families facing difficult times. Then when I read on in the report, you get to 2.12, where it talks about the pressures, which is, of course, as Councillor Gledhill referred to, a euphemism for an overspend. And quite a significant overspend when you actually look at £4.7 million. Not easy, and I do accept Councillor Kent's point about a lot of detail in previous years, but I did do a little bit of digging, and I actually saw that the overspend is being mitigated from my portfolio areas, the shadow portfolio that I represent in environment and public protection. And I added up something like nearly £200,000 in savings on staff costs. And I think what there's got to be is an honest debate about whether we can allow one part of the authority to significantly overspend and for that to actually be subsidised by one of the smaller spending directorates and a directorate that in fact deals with every citizen in this borough. And I think we've got to look very carefully at the mix in which the way we put the budget together. It is frontline services, and there's £200,000 savings in effect on frontline services. So that's why when we start looking at the detail, the devil in the detail, I do have a little bit of difficulty with the general fund. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The opposition hasn't commented at all on John's, one of the major thrusts of his speech, was the great success of regeneration plans in Thurrock. You know, I mean, I'd have thought this was good news and you'd be pleased to hear it. And, you know, when I took over this portfolio, there were no regeneration plans of any sense. There were no plans for core strategies or frameworks or anything at all. We've created all that and now we're getting the results. And it's due very much to all the officers working very well together, regeneration, planning and everywhere. Just think every week there's new good news, isn't there? Lakeside extension, thousands more jobs. And there's Thames Oil Port, we've got 1,000 new jobs at Tilbury. Now this week we've got the announcement about the film studios. Remember, there's not only a brand new film studio, it's all the jobs that will bring. We've also got a new school, new river walk, new parks, new shops in Tilbury. It's all fantastic news. I'm disappointed that the Conservatives aren't joining with us and heralding this really fantastic policies that are bringing these news. It's cool. If you have plans, you work with them, you get results, and that's what we've done. So I'm delighted that this has been so successful. I think we should all join together in supporting this budget.
We have to remember the last Labour government left us debt. The last Labour government left a debt. And the debt was £25,000 for every individual in this country, including the Scots. And that equates for taxpayers here in Thurrock that they were left in debt to the tune of £80,000 each. That's the reality of life that the Conservatives came into. Let's think about it locally. I'm one of the oldest. I don't know, Barry's probably older than me. I'm one of the oldest.
There's a vote you've lost.
You mean Johnson?
All right, I'm older than Barry. I've got it back. And there's no advantage to being old except that you have a memory. The memory I have is of the Labour administration that the Conservatives picked up, and why. For year after year after year after year, the council tax for every taxpayer in in Thurrock went up and up and up, but there was a difference. The rate of increase kept going further up until in the end the ratepayers, the council taxpayers, were climbing a mountain. 48% post on 50%, it was put up in the last 2 years of that last Labour administration. It was a disgrace and they got kicked out. Since then, the council tax rises came down under the Conservatives. They were still too high and we're now down to zero. Thank God for Conservatives.
I think I understand that actually government debt is still increasing. So I think the Conservative assertion that somehow everyone's inherited the debt, I mean, clearly that's kept going. But so it's probably something about a national economic policy which has been quite ruinous to many people, many industries. Just another thing that I don't know. I think we're still the lowest council tax in Essex. Something I think we display on banners and strap lines. Something some of us are proud of. Look across Essex, and that's against a lot of Conservative controlled district and county council. So I think in terms of where we are in relation to our neighbours, we're in a pretty strong position. Just noted down some figures as the leader was talking. 25 million over the last 3 years of savings, looking to 35 to 40 million, and talking about reducing the overall budget by between a quarter and a third. These are, I think, in all these debates, discussions, we talk about service users, we talk about ourselves a lot, we seem to like to self-promote as politicians, fair enough. But I think these actual cuts are on the back of a lot of the people who provide the services. I think in any other industry, a quarter to a third, that would really limit your ability to deliver. And, I salute the people who have been with us and who have worked with us over the last 3 years. The leader doesn't just stand up and say, I want to cut the budget and that's it. He has to go out there and get buy-in from all the people who go out there day in, day out to make it happen. A lot of these people have got, really vocational, their commitment, it's really vocational and really worthy, and it'll be the last chance I'll probably get to solution in public. I just want to do that. And I wish a few more people might do it as well, instead of slagging them off time and time again. So, Mr. Mayor, I think, as Councillor Smith says, yes, there are opportunities. The opportunities have been brought about, by the good work of the Cabinet, the good work of those people I've saluted, who go out there in the regeneration team and actually go after each and every opportunity that is being presented. We've all enjoyed various functions at the High House. Full credit to this administration, full credit to the last administration. President Obama once said about... I'm winding up. He once said about, he was talking about different countries in Africa and saying someone like Africa doesn't need yet another great leader, it needs great institutions. I think we're some way away from the Council being a great institution, but I think with a sustainable budget, as outlined, and as we all scrutinised this year and last year, we can actually do something for a council that will help those people who are day in, day out going out there to deliver the service and make sure that we're not bankrupting ourselves in the next few months. Thank you, Mr.
We have the lowest council tax in Essex because for the last 6 years the Conservatives have set a lower council tax. But getting back to this budget, they have helped the lower council tax. But getting back to the budget, which I welcome, Councillor Kent, up till including the point about the Gloriana. And the thing about the Gloriana, and I have been with Councillor Cook and we've attended all the meetings, but I feel at the moment it is a good thing. We could deliver on several things. We could deliver affordable tenancies, part ownership, sales, and bring into our own ownership all these awful brownfield sites that we see around the borough. But it could also spectacularly go wrong, because at the moment I think we are trying to look at it and wear too many hats. At the end of the day, we're going to be like a builder, an estate agent, a money lender, even a candlestick maybe, for all I know. This company could potentially borrow up to £60 million. of our residents' money, or would be responsible for it. And I feel it needs to come out and be discussed so all the council are aware of what is actually happening. And I don't think all the members are at this point. And I do think it's a good idea, but I think it needs a little bit more discussion in depth at another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to touch on social care. Undoubtedly, everybody in this room will be only too aware that social care spending is exploding, and in the next 10 years, social care spending is likely to dominate most of local authority budgets. But there has been an answer to that, and it's in the form of a Conservative government which is revolutionising health and adult social care spending. No, not destroying it, getting it in order. So, the Better Care Fund. For the first time ever before, NHS and local authority spending will be an emerged shared pool. But there is a difference. We don't get dictated to anymore by the NHS or the former PCT. Actually, we as local representatives form part of a body which sets the priorities for our people. And the other thing, which I'm particularly proud of for hard-working people, Councillor Kiley, is the care bill. So no longer will the family silver be sold off like it was under the Labour years for those that need social care and have to sell off their homes to pay for it. That will be corrected through the care bill. We have to get our facts straight. Yes, Councillor Rice, the operational budget has balanced, but the external purchasing budget has not. We were budgeting 21,977,000 spend, and we're currently forecasted at a £22,625,000 spend. But why is that? Well, we've already talked about social care costs and how they're exploding. So let's just imagine that 50% of the overspend on the purchasing budget is because of unplanned demand. But what's really frightening, or a real shame to be honest with you, is if you look at what spending or savings we've had to make from this department to pay for the 4.7 million overspent by this local authority. What we're actually saying is that because we had a warm winter, we could put the winter precious money back into the 4.7 million black hole. Actually, wouldn't that have been good, filling that back into the service budget? The same as service reviews, in-house provision. We put another £100,000 back into the black hole that was overspent. Imagine if that had gone back into the commission services piece. The truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, can you trust Labour with money? No, you can't.
In our directorate, I thought I would stand up and chat about it. The area of funding that Councillor Wharton is speaking about is a non-statutory area of funding, and I would far rather, and I'm sure our residents in Thurrock would far rather support areas of adult social care and children's social care to the most vulnerable residents in Thurrock than a non-area of statutory funding. Yes, we are going to see frontline services hit, particularly next year, and it's going to be bloody awful.
Incredibly shocked how blasé the opposition are, and instead of focusing on the seriousness of the situation that we're in, they make jokes about sausage sandwiches. It just shows how they have absolutely no understanding of the financial situation that we're in or how to manage it. I've been asked in previous times when I shadow portfolio holder what my vision was for my portfolio, and I can say it certainly wasn't one that year after year I was told due to government cuts I was going to have to make savings. Luckily, with an innovative team, and despite difficulties along the road, we have made those savings, but it will continue to get harder. You say trust the Tory with a budget, and I just want to warn residents, do so at your peril.
Thurrock has the lowest council tax in Essex. I see that flashing up on the Thameside Theatre. I'm proud every time I walk past that sign, and the council tax freeze, which there seems to be a degree of consensus around, absolutely preserves that situation, and I'll be proud to support it again. We've had these strange contradictory claims from the other side. On the one hand that it's a balanced budget, and on the other hand that it's okay to take £2.4 million from reserves to balance the budget. Well, which is it? Clearly the budget is not balanced. It's £2.4 million short of being balanced. That money is being taken from reserves. That's clearly there in black and white. I don't think it's the right way to do it. In previous years, the administration, both sides, has done the work, found the savings, brought them to this chamber and asked us to vote on them. This year, we're being told to leave it to officers and they'll try their best to find answers for us in the end. That is ducking the responsibility to show some political leadership and doing it at the highest order. And a brief comment on sausage sandwiches. It was you who put sausage sandwiches in the report, not me. It is trivia that distracts us from the real work that's going on. I've put an amendment so we don't do it again next year. Don't accuse me of raising it. You put it in the report and you made me vote on it. In terms of reserves, there is this constant claim that the Labour Party is somehow the saviour of reserves. This report is very clear on what actually happened. You received a £10 million windfall on interest payments as a result of the prudent management of the national finances by this government. A big chunk of that has been put into rebuilding reserves, the rest has been spent. It was a good use of a windfall, but let's not mistake that good use of a windfall for some kind of deeper financial competence. A comment was made about government debt is still increasing. Absolutely it's still increasing. You agree that that's a problem, or you appear to, but you won't agree to the only credible solution for solving it, which is that the country has to start living within its means. That's an easy thing to say, it's a hard thing to implement when it means spending less money than you're used to. That's what we have to do. You cannot carry on living in denial that saying the government debt is a bad thing, that the debt increasing is a bad thing, and not do the only thing which will solve it, which is to reduce public spending. And finally, just to pick up on the regeneration comments, it's always good to end on something that we can agree on. We've been told that we couldn't mention the Perfleet thing because it was still under negotiation. It's great to hear tonight that those negotiations appear to have concluded and we can talk about them. I've been told we can't. Okay, perhaps all we can say is what's restricted to what was said tonight then. But with a little bit we can. Convenient that. But with a little bit that we can say, clearly, it looks like a fantastic scheme. Members are still in the privileged position for a week or two of knowing a little more than the general public are able to know yet. But nonetheless, it looks like an excellent scheme, and it'll be great to see the detail coming out in public. I think people realise what a fantastic opportunity for the borough this holds out the potential for being. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Until such, and the reason we can talk about it tonight is that it is going to the Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee next week, therefore those papers are public. However, until such time as we consider the report and make a decision, we have to ensure that we have open minds. So we do just need to be a little careful. Councillor Anderson says, you know, good to finish on a consensual note. You know, I say it every year, we're looking at a budget of somewhere in the region of £124 million, and you know what, 90% of it we will agree on. But we do what we enjoy doing, which is to argue about that very, very small bit that we don't agree on. And in some ways, it is a shame. Councillor Anderson, just need to understand the way that council finance works. The council, us, all of us, 49 of us, set the budget envelope. That's the amount of money that we have to spend. The Cabinet then manages the budget through the year. And in managing that budget from time to time, in order to make sure that we don't overspend the envelope, we have to via from one service to another. I know, Councillor Wootton, that you find that upsetting, but the honest truth is that we all need to make savings within our services, whether we like it or not. Globally, we will come in on budget the same as we did last year and the year before and the year before. Councillor Ojotola said that all schools in Thurrock, primary schools in Thurrock, are being inspected. I would advise Councillor Ojotola, a shadow portfolio holder, to get his briefings from the Education Department and not from your Thurrock. It is, as I've already said, 7 primary schools that are being inspected. As far as that money that is reserved set centrally, you know, I'm not absolutely tied forever and a day with that money being tied centrally. But I think also that it's schools and educationalists that know better how that money should be spent. That's why we're in the process of setting up the Education Alliance that will look at the best way of helping schools to improve. You know, we are, excuse me, absolutely committed to doing that. It's always good to listen to Councillor Rebel with experience, and I do take what he says with a good degree of seriousness. And he said 2 things that were, to me, very interesting. He spoke about debt. You know, we do have to acknowledge that George Osborne has borrowed more since 2010 than every Labour government from 1997 until 2010. And I also respect Councillor Revel when he said, and I noted it down, that council tax rises under the Conservatives were too high. At least there's one Conservative that acknowledges that putting the council tax up by 27% was too much. I'm disappointed that Councillor Little and Councillor Carr seem to think that more important than talking about the budget is having another pop at Councillor Kiley, who I will just point out is here tonight and was here last time and has a better attendance record than Councillor Hurd. Perhaps you should start addressing the problems within your own group.
Councillor Kent, can you find out?
Mr Mayor, if I'm on time, and I didn't think I was, I will stop there and we'll be voting against the amendment. I would be very grateful, though, Mr Mayor, if you could make it abundantly clear how we're voting, because, of course, the Secretary of State has decreed that we have to have a succession of recorded votes this evening.
Correct.
I do take a lot of the comments that have been made in the spirit of the law. We do want to see consensus on this. I'm not prepared to withdraw 1.7p. What I would say, though, is talk of £60 million. That is potential. My commitment is that we need to get the first site away as quickly as we can. That will be at the outside of 20 million, and we will bring something to council in June to cover off those points that people are concerned about. But I'm really not prepared to wait before we can start building.
Unfortunately, I'm aware of related to this as well. We were considering challenging the salaries and pay awards. £429,000 looks like a lot on a relatively small budget. Just to reassure both those on closer examination, we did conclude a significant chunk of that, although not all, does come from staff transferring in from Europa into the housing. So we're not allowing a £500,000 increase in housing staff salaries to go unchallenged. Situations, it's just most of it is money moving from one pot to another. So hopefully people can be assured the work of scrutiny has been done. The rent convergence is complicated, but it's right. It creates a more unified structure for social housing pricing across Thurrock. It puts everyone in the same boat, and there are not significant risks that it will hit people who are least able to pay, because most in those categories are in receipt of housing benefit that pays the full cost of their housing anyway. So it is the right thing to do. Increase of voids from 600 to 900. In a way, I take that as an encouraging sign. One of the problems we've had for too long is that the council housing sites and social housing specifically has felt like it's log jammed. People stay in properties long after they perhaps would have been allocated them had they looked for them on the basis of need today, perhaps long after family have left home and that sort of thing. There has been a lot of work done on under occupancy this year, and this council has been one of the big ones in terms of helping people who were affected by changes to benefits in under occupancy to move on and find a new home. That will be part of the reason why we're seeing more voids. It's movement in the system, and that is to because it shows that we're moving people into the right house that meets their needs, and not having them stuck in the one that they're in forever because they're afraid they wouldn't get a good deal if they were to move on. Overall, the HRA is in a stronger financial position than the general fund. That's not an excuse for not scrutinising our spending. We should make sure that all the money that can is going into delivering value for tenants, and in particular is going to deliver better quality repair service, better quality of houses going to people, and long-term capital improvements to our housing stock, which is not up to the standard that we'd all aspire to right now. So it is right that we scrutinise it and make sure we're putting every penny into those things. I'm sure we'll all keep the pressure up across the chamber to do that. But I
will kind of return to Councillor Little raises the issue of the amount that we spend on grounds maintenance within the HRA. It's just happens to be facts that both the Conservative administration and the Labour administration put more money into grounds maintenance because the maintenance on some of our estates was simply not good enough. It's always the right thing to do to keep these things under review, and if we've gone too far, then of course we will address it. I know that it's been to overview and scrutiny, not over the detail of what the scrutiny report and recommendations were, but we will look at it, and if there's a different way of doing it that gives better value for tenants and is also good for the authority, then of course we'll look at it. Move on to Councillor Anderson, and again we agree much of what he said. The email from Monday night was shared with Councillor Maurice Cook. She just took the same view as me, she disagreed with it. Councillor Perkins, garages, as long as I've been a member, and you're sitting next to Barry, I've not been a member as long as Barry, garages have always been a problem. I don't know why it is, no reason I can see for it, but they've always been a problem. If you could let me have the specifics of the guy with the garage at the end of his garden, I will do all I can to. He should have gone here years ago. that would have been easy. And Councillor Glenhill, again, you know, I know that Rob was involved very early on with the total refurbishment programme, and there's been a strong supporting advocate from the start. And then I come to Councillor Johnson. You know, I have to say that I entirely agree with much of what Councillor Johnson has to say. Yes, the refurbishment programme, when it's completed its 5-year cycle, will mean that some of those smaller problems do not occur. It will cut down the cost of ongoing maintenance. But until we get there, the council has a really delicate balancing act of making sure that we don't give in to tenants because they shout when things are going to be done in 6 months' time. But we also, on the other side of that balance, have to be responsive when people need repairs. And I think that at times our inspection regime is just not good enough. That we should be in these houses, looking at the work that's being done and making sure that it's okay. My mantra when I'm in my own ward is that if it's not something that I would put up with and not something that I would live with, then I don't think that tenants should either. I know that that's the way that Councillor Morris-Cook feels, and I know it's the way that the director, Barbara Browning, feels. You know, I have to say that when Barbara took over as the director, she was the first director of housing for some time. That role had been filled with interims. It had been covered up by a director that, careful what I say, I don't think was particularly interested in housing, quite frankly. And there was an awful lot of work to do to try and get the department fit for purpose. I'm not convinced it's there yet. It is much, much better than it was. But, you know, it's a passion for me, and it's a passion for all of us, that we will get this right, because it's what our tenants, not only it's what they deserve, it's what they pay for as well. So, you know, I accept that there will always be politicking around these things. Outside the chamber and outside the pages of the papers, it would be fantastic if we could work together to make sure that we get it right.